6 minutes after 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. Everybody's getting back on their feet this morning as we are in the second day, actually the 1.5 days from recovery time after that hurricane passed through.
Oh, yes.
A lot of people still without electricity. Those listening to your radios on battery-operated radios in your cars. Gosh, thank you for the wonderful calls. You know, we don't feel like we're doing much because we're just doing a radio show. And the information, especially in today's day and age, the information that we're able to give is pretty much accessible to anybody because of smartphones, etc. You know, back in 1993, we had something similar, and nobody could, you know, they had to depend on the radio. Now, not so much. So we felt sort of obsolete and sort of outdated. But the interesting feedback that we got from our listeners yesterday after just being on the air for the length of time we came in the middle of the night for those who weren't listening.
Yeah. And
we were talking, just giving whatever information we had. But it wasn't the information that they were complimenting us on. It was just being here. If they were alone in their home, for example, they felt like they had a friend out here or somebody to listen. You know what I mean? It was just our dialogue, just us talking, that somehow comforted them. And maybe it was a little peek into what a psychiatrist understands about us humans. I don't know. But we might have accidentally stumbled into something with that. Dr. Alan Francis is on the phone. He is a psychiatrist. Look at that, Robin. He's a professor emeritus and former chair of the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science at Duke University School of Medicine. He's got a book. It's listed as number one, by the way, in the category of personality disorders.
Nice.
It's the number one new release in that category on Amazon. It's called Twilight of American Sanity. A psychiatrist analyzes the age of Trump. A little bit of politics thrown into psychiatry, it sounds like. Good morning, Dr. Francis. What an honor to have you on our show.
Well, good morning, and my commiserations to the people who are suffering through this horrible event.
Yeah, it is, our little role. We have our own homes in the area. We have our own circumstances. And fortunately for us, everything seemed pretty good. But when you drive around town, you see trees that had fallen into houses and floods that went up to people's doorsteps. Not as bad as Houston, but still people having to deal with it now. So, and no electricity for most people.
And I've been through a number of hurricanes at Cape Hatteras and in Durham, and nothing like what you folks are experiencing. But I know the terror and then the horror afterwards when you see the damage that's been done.
So, the interesting thing, though, I wanted to kind of mention this now that we have you on. You probably heard me say it before we started, was that our role in it seemed to be insignificant. It seemed to be not even necessary, especially with today's, you can get information off the internet. But I think because we're a local radio station and everybody feels like they know us, it somehow made a difference. I don't know if there's a word for that in psychiatry or what it means, but anyway, it was wonderful to get that feedback.
Nature is so very powerful, and humans are so very vulnerable that having a caring voice can mean a tremendous amount. But the thing I really would like to discuss about the storm is something that's almost taboo.
What is that?
Especially in these early days. I think it's very important to get beyond just the moment, and as we clean up this mess on the ground, that we think about what does it mean in the longer run. Mm-hmm. So Texas has had 3 1-in-500-year floods in the last 3 years. This storm was the biggest storm, maybe the biggest, depends how you measure it, in the Caribbean history, and to have 6 million people evacuated, the biggest mass migration history, to have 60% of the state without power.
Yeah.
This is a direct wake-up call about global warming. The science is there, and now we feel it. We see it in our neighborhoods.
Right.
And you have in your state a governor who did a good job in the short term on the evacuation, but has been terrible in preparing for this moment, has denied climate change. The Texas governor similarly. And I think that it's very important. If we don't learn from this disaster, we'll keep repeating it. Global warming is now definitely a fact. We have to face it, and we have to spend our money in preventing this from happening over and over again, rather than cleaning up the property and the human damage after each catastrophe.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I was thinking something similar, and I was reading the account of one of our one of the people in our community that is a proponent of the idea that we have caused global warming. And whether you agree with that or not, I'm not trying to get into that argument. It's just that why are you in an airplane flying overhead when you're telling us to use 60-watt light bulbs?
Exactly.
That's the part I don't get. I'm willing to do anything I can. In fact, there's nothing more I can personally do. I live very meagerly and have like one light bulb on at any given time, and then the people lecturing to me are standing in footlights on a stage using more energy than I'll use in my lifetime.
I think that you point out the fact that the sacrifice is going to have to be spread across everyone in our country today, and we have to see this as an insurance policy for the future. So you don't buy life insurance after you die. You buy life insurance before, in case you're going to die. You don't get car insurance after the accident. We have to do now whatever it takes as a country in a unified way across the board to protect our children and grandchildren from hurricanes like this happening every single year. And the writing's on the wall. The 16 of the hottest years on record are in this century.
Right, yeah.
The water temperatures are rising. You can't deny that.
Well, I'm not denying it.
These things are happening, and we have to do something. We have to take out an insurance policy, and the whole country has to pay for it. It can't be one segment of the population that sacrifices.
Exactly, but can I say, okay, as long as we're on this, it sounds like we're having a little bit of a debate, because, and I don't mean to take away from the book, and I don't disagree, by the way. I think the world is definitely being dirtied up by us humans. I think the emissions from the cars are clearly, I knew this in the 70s when I would fly into LA all the time. I could see it in the air. Nobody was talking about global warming, but you could see that the air needed to be cleaned. Now, when I have people on the show telling me the same thing you're telling me, with one exception, they'll say, when I say, who was the guy? We had a guy on, and I'm sorry, I'm asking Robin. We had a guy on, and he was telling me what we should do, and he himself, he's from National Geographic.
Yes.
And he flies around, and he sees all these things that need to be fixed. Mm-hmm. I said, okay, great, but you're flying around. And he said, yes, but I counter it with a carbon credit. He pays $5 something, $5.50 a credit. I don't know how many credits he has to pay for. And I said, well, how does money offset the emissions? I don't understand that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're completely accurate in identifying the fact that we can't expect one segment of the population, often the most vulnerable and the less economically resourced, to bear the burden of the cost of this insurance policy for our kids and grandkids. That it has to be done across all segments.
Right.
And that brings up the tax cut. We certainly can't have a tax cut to the very rich at a time like this, when the money we need to rebuild our country and our infrastructure, to make sure that we have good evacuation routes, to make sure that the places that are going to be flooded are going to be protected. That has to be a shared sacrifice across the country. We have to stop this polarization and ideological infighting and economic warfare.
Well,
we're in the same boat, and that boat's flooding.
If somebody could show me that taxing would somehow accumulate enough money that we could then build cars that don't have any emissions, that the electric cars that are getting their electricity made by electric facilities that don't cause any emissions, if you could show me that money would actually do that, everybody would be for that. I don't think anybody would. Even those people who don't think the world is even warming up, the earth is, even those people who disagree, do agree that the air in LA is dirty, that the air in New York is dirty, the air in Tampa is dirty. Not as dirty, maybe, but it's dirty. You can measure it. Nobody disagrees with that. And if we were on the same page regarding cleaning it up, because if cleaning it up then also reverses the global warming trend, then guess what? We all agree. We just don't agree that you pay $5. The $5.53. Go ahead.
I have to disagree with you that we all agree. The energy industry does not agree. The energy industry is the third biggest lobby in the country. It dominates Texas politics and Oklahoma politics and Louisiana politics, and those three states have almost as bad a climate risk as Florida does. It dominates the GOP agenda. So that I think all sensible people without a severe economic conflict of interest would agree. And the polarization in Washington isn't necessary when people get down and talk common sense about what's good for our kids. But there is and that's why I'm bringing it up today. I think that we shouldn't put off thinking about these things right after a storm, because there will be no other time that we will think about these things.
Right.
And if there's shock treatment that says to the governor of Florida, to the governor of Texas, to Scott Pruitt from Oklahoma, who's ruining the Environmental Protection Agency, to Donald Trump, done everything in his possible power to promote global warming. This is the moment when that shock treatment is important. That's why I'm directing.
Maybe.
Discussion to it.
There's a part of what you're saying where we agree, and there's some parts that I am not completely in agreement with all due respect. In 1900, the Galveston hurricane had winds of 145 miles per hour. 1900. I don't know how much global warming we had caused already at that point, but it just seems to me that if the mission is to clean up the earth, the air, the environment in general, maybe you're right. Maybe the energy sector does not agree that we should do that, but I think the average person does. I don't think the average person would mind driving a clean car. I don't see why they would, as long as they have a car.
The average person now has very little power in the world, and the special interests are very much. You have life insurance, right? Now you're not thinking you're going to die tomorrow, but you do it as a responsible person.
I know. No, I'm not. That's the part I agree with. I'm just.
We all have to make that sacrifice to prevent global warming.
My part that I have an issue with is the carbon credit, the $5.50 a credit. That somehow justifies flying around in an airplane all the time, like Al Gore does. And I'm not an Al Gore basher. I'm just saying, how is it possible that you're telling me you're telling the average person watching these movies that we need to start doing something different, and everybody I know is willing to do it, whether they agree or not with global warming. They're willing to do it. But don't be preaching to us and then justifying your gluttonous use of energy by saying I pay my carbon credit fee. I pay it. How does that justify anything? That's like telling me I can put dirt on your front step because I paid for the right to do that.
We agree completely on this, and I think the 2 points we would take from it with full agreement are: one, that the sacrifice has to be general, not localized to the people least able to handle it, and two, that we have to do this for our kids and grandkids.
I don't agree. I don't disagree. I absolutely agree with that. Right. What you don't know about Robin and I is that we were a children's act. And one of the songs we did back in the 1980s, 88 or so, we did a song called Forest Green. And the song said, all I want is a world to pass on to the children, green as the world passed on to me. We're both 63 years old, so we're not young. And so what I'm trying to tell you is that we've been in agreement with this message ever since we could remember. It's just that I don't get the people who disagree with that message by doing everything they can to tell us what we should do, and at the same time they're not doing what they're saying we should do, and they're justifying it by paying for a carbon credit, including Trump, by the way. I'm not. I can pick on the same people you want to pick on because he's doing the same exact thing, except he doesn't agree that the world is warming up. The global. He doesn't agree with that. Gosh, this has been a great conversation, but I know you got to go. You probably have 100 other radio interviews. Dr. Alan Francis, what an honor. Thank you for being on the show. Twilight of American Sanity is the book, and I found it on Amazon. Doctor, did you have a website you wanted to direct us to?
Okay, I guess he's gone. You scared him.
All right. No, he probably had another interview.
Yeah.
That was a good interview. I didn't take it down that road, though.
No,
I didn't go.
Not.
I didn't go in the direction. We went there because he seemed like he wanted to go there.
Exactly. That was his request off the air when he came on.
All right. We will take a break. I mean, I don't know if you liked that interview or not, but don't I make sense?
You do
don't it make sense? I mean, I want the world clean as much as anybody, and I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you whether it's warming up or not. And if you're a scientist, you tell me it is. I guess I'll have to accept it because you're the one who studied it.
That's right.
But as far as I'm concerned, don't tell me to not let the dog poop in the street, and then you let the dog poop in the street.
Exactly.
And how come? Oh, because I pay a credit.
Right.
I pay a dog pooping credit.
Exactly.
We'll
Good
be right
sense.
back.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accidents. On this Tuesday, times of clouds and sun with a high of 86 to 90. Partly cloudy Tuesday night, lows in the upper 60s, inland 74 along the coast. For Wednesday, intervals of clouds and sun with a shower or thunderstorm around during the afternoon and evening hours, high 87 to 91. Thursday, some sunshine with a shower or thunderstorm likely, high 87 to 91.